I get resident super fan, and you're Mr. Do It All.
Take two.
Better than us.
Welcome everybody back to the Penn State 365 podcast. I'm keeping that intro in there from Anthony. You heard it. We're back here for another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast, previewing the Indiana game for Penn State. I'm Dylan Callaghan-Croley, beat writer, recurring analyst, and as Anthony put it, thank you, Anthony, Mr. Do It All over at Happy Valley Insider. I'm joined by resident superfan Anthony Hazan, as well as my colleague at Happy Valley Insider Marty Leap. Gentlemen, it's been about a week since we last talked to Anthony. Me and Marty talked Penn State's future extensively on Sunday. We're not going to go back and rehash any of that conversation. I think our listeners have heard enough of it. It actually didn't go up until 2 days ago. Apologize on that. But, gentlemen, Penn State, Indiana this week, and I think it's fair to say that there is no excitement around Happy Valley for this game. For next week, there is excitement for that Michigan game, but in reality, there's a lot of the energy of the season has been zapped from, the Penn State faithful here after last week's loss to Ohio State. We'll talk about that. We'll preview the Penn State Indiana game a little bit as well. Not really much, I think, to talk about that one. That's a game Penn State should roll in, but. For beginners, let's kind of start in the Big Ten with a big news story out in Ann Arbor. This whole sign stealing scandal with the Wolverines. What's the guy's last? I know his last name's Stallion. What's his first name now? I forget. Mark, Mike, whatever.
Connor, I believe.
Connor Stallion. Uh, going to games and recording other teams' signs for entire games. It's quite the cheating scandal allegations against the Wolverines. Just quickly, what are your guys' thoughts on this? Anthony, I'll start with you.
I don't know what to think about this. I mean, on the surface, like, yeah, it feels like a really big deal. It sounds like, not only do they have this whole like layers deep operation to steal signs
Yeah.
from opponents, they also might have, given that intel to other teams that has influenced the outcomes of other games across the country. Depending on how deep this goes will determine the punishment for Michigan. It could be nothing, it could be a massive punishment. Time will tell. But yeah, I mean, it just seems like or not everything, something new comes out every single day
Yeah.
with this. And it
Yeah.
just feels like it gets crazier and crazier. And it's just going deeper and deeper. And it just goes back years. Like this,
Yeah.
I saw a tweet that like this could have gone as far back as 2018. Like, it's just crazy to think about, how wild this is running on social media, but also just the extent of this could be massive.
Sure. Marty, what's your thoughts on this sign stealing, cheating scandal, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I mean, this goes on everywhere at every level of football. Um, from pros down through high school, teams do this. But what Michigan has done goes so far beyond what everyone else does. I mean, between sending Stallions to scout games and record on his phone, and it certainly seems like there's a possibility, like Anthony said, of them sending these things and collaborating essentially with other programs to try and potentially impact who they may play in the college football playoff. Yeah, I know I've said before that I didn't foresee Jim Harbaugh being Michigan's head coach next year. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think there's any chance of that. Now, I know we talked a little before we got on the air. We kind of had some disagreements here, but I'm not going to be surprised if Jim Harbaugh is not their coach next time they play a football game, let alone next season. Um, Especially with the bye week this week for Michigan, so they've got some time here to sort through things. But also, like, man, how freaking sloppy can you be? Like, you're buying the tickets in his name. You're exchanging money over Venmo. Like, use cash. Use prepaid debit cards. Get the burner phone out. Get the fake names. Like, come on, don't. It's just pure stupidity on Michigan's end. Also, how sloppy they were and the amount of receipts they left and the amount of paper trails they left behind. And hey, it's they brought this on themselves. Whatever is going to come is going to come. I personally think they're probably going to get hammered pretty hard here by the NCAA and the Big Ten in the coming months. we'll see what happens. But either way, just extreme sloppiness by Michigan or by anybody who wants to go to this extent to cheat and to steal signs and that sort of thing, and to just not even. It's almost arrogance, which I mean, I guess the whole Michigan man thing kind of fits some of the stereotypes people have about that. But it was almost arrogance the way they just didn't even attempt to hide what they were
Sure,
doing. And honestly, it makes it kind of surprising it took this long for them to get caught.
sure, sure. Yeah, I don't have too much else to add off what you guys said. I think it's just such a crazy storyline to add to this season. We'll see what happens in regards to season 4 Michigan, but I mean, uh, we talked about in the past that this could be Jim Harbaugh's last year in Ann Arbor to begin with. But with this, I mean, I would be very much surprised if come the 2024 season that Jim Harbaugh is still with the Wolverines at this point. I don't know how he can survive this because this is if these allegations are true, we're talking Patriots level of Spygate here for the Wolverines. I mean, at that point, to what they have been doing, whether Jim Harbaugh did know or not, this is his program. He's ultimately responsible for what happens, and also at the end of the day, I refuse to believe that when the dude's on the sideline next to you with the laminated sheet that has the opposing team's signs, that you don't know about it. But that's neither here nor there. I just want to get your guys' quick thoughts on that as we start today's episode. Let's go to this Penn State Indiana game. Like I said, you could feel the excitement kind of be zapped out of this Penn State fan base after last week's loss. Um, Anthony, you're the resident super fan. Just what's your energy level heading into this week against Indiana? And I mean, not to kind of steal what you're going to say, but to a degree, when we were talking before going live here, you kind of said like at this point, you know that they're going to win this weekend. It's probably just about how much. So and it's hard for you to care about this game to a degree, just because you know what's probably going to happen. If they lose the game, we're having another level of conversation this weekend. But you know what's going to happen this week. You probably know what's going to happen next week. But does it really matter if in 3 weeks they don't beat Michigan? Am I right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, listen, last year you felt really good about going 10-2, but still losing to Ohio State and Michigan. You came off 2 really bad to subpar years, and then it felt like a nice turning point. This year, on the other hand, felt like the year that you could finally get over the hump. You could finally, assert yourself as a team to beat and a force to be reckoned with in the Big Ten East. Obviously, to this point, you're 0 for 1. Now, obviously, if you beat Michigan, maybe the perception changes. But at this point, that was the time, that was the place, this was the team, and you blew it. So it's really hard, like you said, to go into this game and care about style points and care about, I hope we beat them by 50. Just win the freaking game and move forward. Like, because it's all going to hinge on one game anyway. Obviously, if you drop another game, then shit's really going to hit the fan. But for now, the excitement levels still are pretty low for this weekend. It's going to take a while to really get over, the Ohio State loss. That to me felt, just for the fan base, it felt like a backbreaking loss. And based off James Franklin's comments, it felt like a loss for the team that was kind of backbreaking, or at least a little bit like debilitating. Like, it sounds like they're still trying to move past it. So, we'll see how they come out this weekend. My thoughts are, just like every other game, they're probably going to come out flat offensively, just because it seems like the trend. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But whether it's 28-7 or 56-7, just win the game.
Absolutely. Marty, for you, I guess my question for you is, just what are your expectations that you're going to be looking forward to see out of the Nittany Lions this weekend against Indiana? What do you think are not the keys to victory, but I mean, if this Penn State team is going to start getting right and in a position that they could potentially knock off Michigan in a couple weeks, just what do you think are some building blocks they need to really show on Saturday And then, showed it against Maryland too. But starting this week, I mean, there's a lot of kinks they have to work out and quickly. What do you think are the ones that they need to hit on absolutely this weekend?
I mean, first and foremost, can we throw the ball down the field? Can we attempt the pass that travels more than 20 yards in the air? Running the ball. Where's the explosiveness? Where is it? Let's see it. Can we use the middle of the field? Let's throw the ball to the middle of the field, please. Like these are basic things. Yeah, if this team, I know I said it on our most recent episode. When it was just you and I, Dylan, that the Michigan game has now become the most important game of the James Franklin era, and I think it's by a lot. Because if you go 10-2 with this team, this season's a letdown. This season, I don't care how you want to cut it, how you want to spin it. 10-2 with this team, with this schedule, with this roster is a letdown. So yeah, this weekend and honestly next weekend against Maryland, obviously Maryland will be a much tougher opponent than Indiana, but that's still a team you should beat handedly. Work out the bugs in his offense. Get it figured out. Find out a receiver. Force feed people. Try and force someone to finally step up with the receiver position. I know we haven't seen a lot of them. I know behind the scenes they still think there's work to be done there. But when Caden Saunders has been on the field this year, he's caught the ball. You know, that last drive against Ohio State, made a couple really good catches, touchdown included. I want to see more Caden Saunders. What the hell? Why not? What else we can do receiver? I think this offense, you've got to try and figure something out. I know we kind of said it jokingly a lot, that, man, this could be the most boring offense in college football history that averages 45 points per game. Well, it's gone from that to being a concern because you've played two defenses with a pulse this year. Ohio State completely smothered you, and the only reason you're able to do what you did against Iowa is because Iowa's offense is Iowa, and their defense got worn out. So there's a lot of concerns with this offense. Indiana is a bad team. They're a team that honestly is probably on quit watch going into this game. You've got to find a way to exploit that with your offense, because I still think that just simply hitting some big plays, getting some momentum, getting some confidence could go a long way for this group. Obviously, it takes more than that. You need the receivers to get separation. You need Mike Yurcich to be willing to utilize the middle of the field. You need Mike Yurcich and James Franklin to let their quarterback throw the ball deep. But I do think if you can start hitting some chunk plays, even against a team as bad as Indiana, that can build some confidence, some momentum that this offense just sorely lacks right now.
All right, and that's our preview for today. No. Dad on that. Yeah, great points out of you, Marty. 100% agree with you there on what Penn State needs to start showing this weekend. The other thing with Mike Yurcich that I'm going to be looking for this week is just this Penn State offense needs to start showing some creativity, I think, in their game plan, in their play calling. There is no creativity in this offense right now. I mean, you can point to a couple, trick play attempts they've tried, but I mean, those trick plays that Mike Yurcich calls always seem to be at the worst of times, in my opinion. I mean, last week against Ohio State, they get deep into Ohio State territory, and then their first play is a trick play in which Dante Cephas forgets that what the play is, and B, Drew just kind of has to throw it up into no man's land because of everything else that went wrong in the play. The creativity's just not been there for this offense, and I think you need to start showing that because I don't think without it you're going to beat Michigan. So if you can't have that creativity against Indiana, if you can't have that against Maryland, why are you going to be able to have that creativity again? How are you going to be able to have that creativity against Michigan? Anthony, I think we both agreed there's no concerns about this Penn State defense against this Indiana offense. I mean, as I bring up the stats, Indiana this year averaging 17.9 points per game, 125th in the country, averaging 311 yards a game, which is 113.7 on the ground, 3.5 yards a carry, 200 yards through the air. I mean, I don't expect Indiana to have any sustained success in this game. If they do, it often comes for opposing offenses on the first drive of the game for Penn State, but after that, I'm not sure Indiana's going to crack 150 yards in this game. I'm going to be honest. Just is not a good Indiana offense. Their quarterback play is suboptimal. Now they do have a quarterback who has a little bit of a dual threat capability. We saw that with Garrett Green earlier this year in West Virginia. Give Penn State a little bit of an issue, but and then do you expect any sort of letdown with the defense coming out of this last week? Because I mean, defense played well enough to beat, I would say, almost any team in the country last weekend.
Yeah, not really. I think the defense will probably come out and do what they do. Usually they're good for just one drive where everything seems to fall apart and
Sure.
the team twists. I feel like that happens to everybody. So I'm not gonna. The issue is not with the defense. Obviously, you're probably not gonna have Chop this weekend. It seems like he sustained a pretty whopper concussion, so you're probably not gonna have him this week, possibly even next week. So we'll see what happens with that.
I don't think you need him to win either of those games either.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I was going to get to. But Vanover, probably same deal. I think Franklin said he's a game-time decision. I assume that he'll sit out this week just because, again, you don't need those two to beat Indiana, especially with the defensive ends you have in the pipeline. On the defensive side, I'm actually most excited to see guys like Zariah Fisher a little bit more, guys like especially Jameel Lyons, the true freshman, who in spurts has really flashed and shown the potential to be a high-level edge rusher at the Big Ten level. So I'm kind of excited to see him get a little more run this weekend. But yeah, the defense should be fine. I have really no concerns in that regard.
Yeah, and I expect, not that they haven't been playing a ton already, but going forward, the freshmen that have burned their red shirts, I wouldn't be surprised here in the last couple weeks of the season if Penn State is in a position where they can put the younger guys out there and see more of them if we see a heavier dose of those young guys like King Mack, like Elliott Washington, so on and so forth, just to help them get ready for next season. Because especially in that secondary, King Mack and Elliott Washington are going to be big parts of Penn State's plans next year. Marty, what do you think of that? Do you think Penn State we may see a little bit more of those true freshmen who've burned their red shirts over the next couple weeks?
I mean, that's the hope because, you look at your remaining schedule, Michigan aside, you think these are all games you should win handedly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's the hope. I also think it's probably a pretty good shot at this point. We're going to see Jameel Lyons burn the red shirt, especially with the current depth of defensive end. I mean, right now he's probably assuming Van. I mean, I'm with Anthony. I'll be stunned. I don't see any chance we see Chop Robinson before Michigan. And assuming Vanover's out on Saturday as well, you got to think Lyons is probably the defensive end number 4, so he's going to find himself firmly in this rotation. And again, this is an Indiana team that you should beat easily.
Yeah.
We've seen this show before with James Franklin. It's a team you should beat easily, and you should be allowed to let Lyons be able to allow Lyons get a lot of run. But yeah, I'm curious to see like Tony Rojas, another guy I'm excited to see in the coming weeks. Especially if things don't go the way you want against Michigan, then you really kind of start turning the page to this next group and the next year at that point. So, Rojas, the guy I'm excited to see. King Mack's the guy I'm excited to see more of. I think Zion Tracy is going to be an absolute stud for them at cornerback. I'm excited to see more from him. But, there's a lot of young guys on this defense. I think we're going to see make some big contributions in the coming week this weekend, including this weekend against Indiana. And, that's always a fun thing to watch for any program.
Yeah, and you mentioned Penn State's struggles coming off losses in the past. Now, it is worth noting last year they did suffer, big losses twice, both to Ohio State and Michigan. And out of both of those losses, they came out the next week and dominated the game. Minnesota, they won 45-17. Indiana, they won 45-14. We'll see if that carries over in this year. But last year, we kind of saw Penn State kind of right the ship on that mentality of when they get beat, they don't carry it over into the next week. And James Franklin talked about that in his press conference this week about how in the past, one loss for them has turned into 2 losses. They have to stop. They have to make sure that trend does not come back this week. And I don't think it will. I don't think this Indiana team is particularly good enough to do that to Penn State. And for the most part, the last 2 years, Penn State has absolutely dominated every game that they should dominate. this is a game coming into the week that they absolutely should dominate. Um, and then going back to you with the offense, wide receivers, Marty touched on a bit. Outside of Caden Saunders, is there any wide receivers that you think you would particularly like to see Penn State kind of just see what they have a little bit more of? Maybe Amari Evans. I mean, I think we know right now what Dante Cephas is. He's a guy who's not able to grasp the playbook. There are some significant issues in that, it seems. But there's Amari Evans. There's obviously Caden Saunders. You've got Malik McClain, who's disappeared over the last few weeks. I mean, are there any guys on offense you want to see a little bit more of a run on in the next couple of weeks? Or Trey Potts? I mean, Trey Potts has shown flashes all year, but he hasn't really gotten the carries either.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing more Trey Potts. I mean, you've seen him mostly in garbage time, but when he played in meaningful snaps against Northwestern, he looked like he might be the best freaking running back on this team right now. I mean, obviously he's from a talent perspective, he's obviously not, but he looked shifty, he looked agile, like he looked fast, and that's more than you could say for Singleton or Allen playing running back right now. Like, I do want to see more of Trey Potts. I want to see what he brings to the table. He almost felt like he brought like a different energy than those other guys have brought to this point in the season. But in terms of receiver, no, there's nothing I really want to see. It's actually insane just how pathetic that room feels right now. Like, outside of, KLS and, Trey Wallace, you at least think he can bring something to the table on a week-to-week basis. There's absolutely nothing in that room to be excited about. Like you said, Cephas feels like he just can't grasp the playbook to save his life. Malik McClain, I don't really understand why they've completely went away from him. Like, he played really well in week 1.
Marty and I talked about
that.
He had
a horrible game against Illinois, and then you just forgot about him. Like,
and he's shown flashes in practice too.
Yeah, just let him play. See what happens at this point. Who freaking cares? You got to get something out of that room.
And that's where I'm at.
Like, with Caden Saunders, when Marty said that, like, he wants to see more Caden Saunders because he at least catches the football, like, the bar is so low for this receiver room right now that if you catch the football on a consistent basis in a game, you want to see them more on the field. Like, it's just, even, like, looking to the future, like, there's just, like, yeah, Anthony Ivy could be good. You don't really know what you have with Christian Driver. Amari Evans has just been completely MIA. Like, there's nothing even to be excited about. Like, it's just, this room is barren right now, and it's actually so depressing to think that you finally have the quarterback and you don't have a receiver to your name that you could throw out there to put with him to even try to elevate him. It's just disgusting to think about.
This is where we put a flashback into a couple episodes back when I said it'd be very Penn State, as somebody who's grown up watching Penn State football, who's been around the program for most of my life, it'd be very Penn State to finally have that quarterback for the Nittany Lions who could take them to the next level. And then the one position where they've had a good success in the past, wide receiver, they do not have any when they finally have that quarterback. And the concerning part for Penn State is like you said, even looking towards the future, there are no immediate answers for Penn State heading into 2024 at the position. As long as Singleton and Allen improve into next season from this year, Drew continues to take steps. I mean, the only thing that could keep next year's offense from maybe being a elite offense is the fact that they don't have wide receivers. Obviously, there are some other issues that they have to work out this offseason. But even if they work out all those issues, you still come back to being a one-dimensional offense, which reminds you a lot of those of Iowa teams, of some of those Wisconsin teams, which, great, those Iowa-Wisconsin teams won 10 games, but they cannot beat the big dogs. And, I know Penn State next year won't have to play Caleb Williams or Michael Penix or those type of guys, but they're still going to have some really tough matchups next year in which they're going to need an offense to probably put up, 30, 40 points to win some games. Because while I have been a big, can't think of the word, but while I've been saying that I don't think the defense is going to take a huge step back. I think it's going to take a step back. I just think it's going to still be a top 20, 25 defense. They're still going to have games next year in which they're not, they're going to allow more than 9.7 points per game. They just kept Ohio State to 20 points per game. That doesn't happen very often. That's not going to probably happen next year. The defense won't be to that level. USC still is going to have some dogs in that offense. Washington is still going to have some dogs in that offense. Penn State's going to need those wide receivers to step up next year, which is why I'm also at the point of the season for as an objective writer looking at this team. Penn State, I think, just needs to start seeing what they have in these wide receivers in game situations. I mean, some guys just don't practice well. Some guys just do not practice well. Some guys play better when the lights are on. And you gotta give some of these guys some legitimate run in the offense with the first string guys going up against first string defense. Yes, Caden Saunders looked good last week, but he also did it again when Ohio State was playing the softest coverage they've played all day because it was a 2-score game at that point. Let's see what Caden Saunders can do against a starting, Power 5 defense this week in Indiana. Let's see what he can do. Let's see what Malik McLean can do. I think Penn State just needs to start letting these guys get some run in actual meaningful situations, because if none of them show anything the rest of the way, I mean, it is DEFCON level 5 heading into next season with that position.
I mean, I would argue it's going to be DEFCON level 5 heading into.
It's pretty close. It's pretty close.
First off, Dylan, as the history teacher of the group, I must correct you. It is DEFCON level 1.
DEFCON level 1. Okay, it goes opposite.
If this is DEFCON level 5, we're pretty sad. No, DEFCON level 1. I don't see. You said about a potential elite offense next year, and that's putting the cart way ahead of the horse there.
Sure, but they have the talent outside of wide receiver. They have the talent to have that. They have a quarterback who should be. I think so. I think Drew is still that quarterback who'd be a 5-star quarterback. He needs to show that development going forward, and that's also more on him. That's also on Mike Yursich and James Franklin. I mean, the running backs have the ability to be elite. They haven't shown that this year, but we've talked about that edge perimeter issue for them, which I think is a big issue. And I think also something we didn't really talk about last week, but Hunter Norzad has struggled against the better defensive lines at center. I don't think that's helping the interior rushing attack either. Yes, they lose part of the offensive line, but I think you look at. Okay, sorry, I was just making sure it was still recording because something popped up. But you look at you lose the tackles. I still think there's a good amount of talent on that offensive line. I'm saying there's potential to be an elite offense if it all clicks. I don't know if it's all going to click. I think at worst, you're probably looking at an average, top 25 offense. Nothing that's going to, nothing that's going to blow you away. But I don't think they're going to struggle to put up, points against the teams they should be next year. But I also don't see right now any answers to beating the Michigans and Ohio States next year, though. I think they only play one of those next year, correct?
Yeah, they only play Ohio State, but still, I don't know. I think it goes back to your point. They're already not struggling to put points up against the team they should put points up against.
Well,
but that doesn't. It's 2018 was similar. It didn't matter that they put 63 on Illinois. It didn't matter that they put 58 on Maryland. What mattered was when they played Michigan, when they played Michigan State, when they put Ohio State, they couldn't freaking score.
Sure. Now the good news. The good news for them next year is that they only face really one good defense, and that's going to be Ohio State. USC won't fix their defensive issues, and that Washington defense is kind of suspect, in my opinion, as well, and they're going to lose some pieces as well.
Sure, you got to play a Dan Lanning defense next year. It's not going to be pleasant. I don't know. I understand it's not all on Drew. The wide receivers have been just atrocious. The coaching has not done him any favors. The tight ends, rather it's because of just a step back and play. Yeah, I think some of that also falls to the feet of coaching.
It does.
Running backs have regressed. it's been everybody around him. But you look at the offense going into next year. Not to get on a tangent about next year, it's just you lose your tackles. You have there's zero reason to expect this receiver room with what's on this roster. I mean, a lot of this roster I think is going to be gone. They're going to be gone. You look at running back. I mean, you hope Singleton and Allen can find what they had last year. You really do. But I could see a scenario where this offense takes a huge step back next year, which, considering where it's at right now, is extremely concerning.
Anthony, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, I can't even focus on next year right now just because they have to get through this year.
No,
And
but I guess I mean on the just wide receivers getting run here over the next couple weeks, just because I mean obviously the room is not great, but you got to figure out if there's any like even potential guy here that you can see having at least somewhat of a good enough offseason that they become a respectable wide receiver target next season.
yeah, I mean, listen, even if the guy isn't perfect, even if he makes mistakes, drops a pass, whatever, like, put him out there. Like, seriously, like, anyone who has any sort of level talent to play at this level, put him out there, see what happens. Let's see what Anthony Ivy's got. Like, it's year 2 for him. Is he really just not that ready yet? Like, let's see what he's got. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, especially, you're playing a team that you're 32-point favorites against. You should at least have a big lead at some point in this game. Like, throw them all out there.
Yep.
Let's just see what happens.
Yep.
And you never know. Maybe you find something with somebody. But
Yep.
yeah, like it's just like Marty said, it's bad. That room it's just terrible right now, and there's absolutely nothing to look forward to.
No, yeah, I definitely think it's a room that is a very bad spot heading into next season as it looks right now, and it's hard to imagine them being able to go into the transfer portal and land a big play wide receiver. So I mean, there are no immediate answers for this offense at wide receiver, and that's just like I said. That's why I think this weekend going forward, you just have to get those depth guys you have that you have been using, and go out there and see what they have. I mean, like you said, I mean, what's the worst that can happen right now? If they go out there and they fail, so be it. At least you tried. But I mean, I just I think you have to see because maybe it is a coaching thing. Maybe one of these guys leaves in the transfer portal, goes elsewhere, and lights it up. But I mean, I think before some of these guys, you got to make hard decisions on. You got to also see what they have in the tank, and you're not facing the best couple defenses here at the end of the season, especially with Indiana this week. Maryland's not a great defense. Michigan State has their struggles. This is the time to do it. This is the time to do it. And who knows? Maybe somebody flashes this week and next week, and then they become a potential weapon against Michigan. But there are very few signs that that's going to be the case.
Yeah, and to be honest, even if someone did flash this week and next week, I wouldn't fault anyone for not being even the least bit excited in that. Until it's done against one of the big two.
Sure.
I mean, that's where they're at as a program right now. It truly is. I mean, I'm not to harp back on it, but you had a golden opportunity this last weekend. You didn't even show up. You didn't even show up offensively. Just a golden opportunity, and offensively, you don't even show up. Until it's done against one of those two teams, I'm not going to fault anybody for having zero excitement over anything they see from this offense.
Sure, but yeah, you're absolutely right. But I mean, from a coaching staff perspective, I mean, they have nothing to lose at this point with this wide receiver room. You just get them out there, let them run, and see what happens. I mean, there's really not much you could say about this wide receiver room, and this we talked about in the past, but this goes back to, instability at the wide receiver position, and position coach position, whatever. And with that comes poor recruiting. They've landed a couple of guys here and there, but it just the depth pieces that have not worked out in the wide receiver recruiting, and it's coming back to bite them right now. And it's going to keep them from probably being a college football playoff team this year, barring anything extremely surprising. And next year, I think this is still a team that could be a college football playoff team, and because I think next year 10-2 is probably where this team ends up, and 10-2 probably gets you in the playoffs next year, but without any top end wide receiver or any wide receiver that's not even in top end, but a wide receiver you can rely on, it's just hard to see them doing anything at that point. But we're gonna have all offseason to discuss what Penn State is and is not heading to next season, and we're gonna leave that discussion for then. At this point, any other thoughts on Penn State versus Indiana? I mean, anything you guys want to say about this matchup? Anything your player you're keeping an eye on? Any matchup within the matchup you're watching? Anything like that, Anthony?
No, I mean, I talked about Jameel Lyons and being excited
Sure.
to see a little more of him in this game. Like Marty said, I'll be interested to see some of the younger guys in the secondary. I guess the biggest thing you're looking for is, can they run the ball against this team? Can they establish the run? Will they utilize their running backs correctly and stop trying to make Singleton a battering ram and having Allen dance outside? Maybe flip that and let them do what they're good at. But, other than that, no, just go out there and just have a bounce back game maybe would be nice.
Some great points there, and I think the Russian attack is something I'll be watching closely from the press box on Saturday. This Penn State Russian attack has been fine enough against most opponents, but fine enough and doesn't cut it against states of the world. And they did run the ball well in the first half last week, and then second half when it became obvious when those Russian situations were, Ohio State was able to sell out and stop it. And I do think James does have some validity in what he was saying at this week's press conference, that the pass run ratio did not become overly out of balance until late in the game when they started really having to throw the ball every down. But I mean, it still wasn't by any means a great game. Called by Mike Gersich and the Nittany Lions. Marty, anything you're watching in particular this weekend of certain players, certain matchup, anything like that?
Just as a whole, I'm curious how the team comes out. I mean, it was a disheartening loss for the entire program last week.
Sure.
Under James Franklin, in his first 9 years, they lost back-to-back games in 6 of them. He is 3-6 against the spread the week after Ohio State in his career. History tells you that this is a spot where Penn State comes out and lays an egg, and even if they win, it's not pretty. I'm just curious to see how the team as a whole responds on Saturday. Noon kickoff at home. I'm sure the crowd's not exactly going to be, a raucous one. I think there's a scenario where they had a better crowd for Delaware than we're going to see on Saturday for a variety of different reasons. But I'm just curious how the entire team responds, because in the past under Franklin, they have not responded well in these situations. And I would argue that, they're coming off of, maybe other than that 2017 game against Ohio State, they're coming off of, probably top 2 or 3 just gut punch, disheartening loss they've ever suffered. Maybe not gut punch, because it wasn't a gut punch kind of game, because you never at any point felt like Penn State had a chance of winning that game because of the offense. But one of the most disheartening losses they've ever suffered under him, and they don't respond well in these situations. So let's see how the team as a whole responds on Saturday.
Let's get a score prediction, and then we'll do our Big Ten picks. Small Big Ten slate this week, 5 games. Score prediction for this one, Penn State, I believe, is a 30-point favorite. I'm going to double check that here real quick. 32-point favorite. 32-point favorite over Indiana, 12 o'clock kickoff on CBS. I'll start off. I think Penn State bounced back this week. And like I said, last year they kind of bounced back really well from their 2 losses. I'll be most interested in really watching how Drew bounces back from last week's performance. Give me Penn State 38-7. Anthony?
Dylan, we do this every week. I was going to say 38-13.
Okay, well, that's okay.
But so I'll give Indiana an extra touchdown, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I
2
feel
field
like
goals.
38 feels like the right number offensively. I don't think they're going to go out there and hang 60 on them like they probably should. But, they still win. I'll give Indiana the cover just because I think this team's going to come out flat, and I think it's going to take them a quarter and a half to realize, oh, we're in a football game. We might as well put up a few points and make it at least look a little interesting.
This is an Indiana team defense that did keep Ohio State kind of quiet in week 1 as well. Marty, what's your score prediction for this week?
Yeah, I'm going to resonate with something Anthony said. I think this team comes out extremely flat. I think they play some really, really crappy football for a half, maybe longer. I think they win. And I don't think this is a game where you ever feel like they're not going to win. But I think Indiana covers. I'm going to say Penn State 31, Indiana 13. I think this is going to be one of those wins where it's just you get in, you get out, you get a win, you get over last week, and you get ready for Maryland. And yeah, I'll say 31-13.
All right, let's go into the Big Ten games then this week here. Like I said, small slate. Now just 5 games. Starting at noon, kicking off same time as Penn State, Indiana is Maryland and Northwestern in Evanston. 11 a.m. kick local time. Maryland a 14-point favorite here. Last time we saw the Terps on the field, they lost to Illinois. Northwestern, on the other hand, lost last week to Nebraska 17-9. Give me Maryland to cover and win this game. I wouldn't be shocked if they come out flat with that 11 a.m. kick, but they're coming off the bye week. This is not a good Northwestern team, but a scrappy one. I think it could be close for a half, but I think 14 points. I could see Maryland winning this one by 17, 20 points.
Yeah, that was a gut punch loss for Maryland. A team that, they still have a lot in front of them in terms of the potential to, win 9 games potentially. Yeah. But, they had, an opportunity to really establish themselves a little bit, and that's a gut punch.
For sure.
Yeah, give me Maryland to win and cover, though, regardless of that. Northwestern still is not a good team, and I don't care that they're at home. I can see that being close for a little bit, but I think Maryland eventually pulls away. So give me Maryland to win and cover.
All right. Marty?
Yeah, that's right, man. I think Maryland wins and covers. I think they hem-haw around for a while, and Northwestern keeps it close. Like Anthony said, that Illinois loss is a gut punch for Maryland. It was one of those losses where they remind you they're still Maryland. I know I was a big Maryland proponent early in the year, sitting here saying this was finally going to be the year that they get it together and don't lose a game they shouldn't lose and wind up 9-3, and that's not at all what's going to wind up happening. But yeah, I think the Terps bounce back. They probably start slow, but give me the Terps to win and cover.
Yeah, and I think looking forward, Penn State does win, I think, against Maryland next weekend. But that's a game that I would be surprised if is pretty close for all 4 quarters. 3:30 p.m. In Minnesota, Michigan State at Minnesota. Minnesota 7.5-point favorite here. Give me Minnesota to win, but give me Michigan State to cover this. I talked to you guys before coming on. This Michigan State defense, not a great defense, but is better than the numbers say. They've been hurt by short field positions a lot, and having no offense has been just really detrimental to that defense. It's not a great defense by any means. It's not a good one by any means, but it's a fairly decent one. Minnesota's offense is not anything great. So unless Minnesota gets 3-4 turnovers here, which is possible, I just don't see Minnesota running away with this one. So give me Minnesota to win, but Michigan State to cover.
Hell of a win by Minnesota last week against Iowa.
Minnesota controls their destiny now in the Big Ten West.
I know Iowa can't score, but still, I was surprised that they couldn't at least put up enough points, and their defense, wasn't able to stop. Their defense did stop Minnesota. They only scored 12 points, but
all field goals.
Yeah, impressive win for Minnesota.
Minnesota in the last 2 games before that allowed 175 plus yards in each of the last 2 175 rushing yards in each of the last 2 games before that. You would have thought going in against Iowa that Iowa was going to be able to run the ball all day. They kept Iowa to just 11 rushing yards that game.
Yeah, but anyway, I'm going to go to the opposite. I'll take Minnesota to win and cover. I agree with you. I think this is whatever the under is in this one, take it. I think both these offenses stink, but at the same time, it could make for a fun game. classic Big Ten matchup. So give me Minnesota to win, and I'll take the late backdoor cover for Minnesota.
Sure.
I'm calling a sneaky backdoor cover.
Marty.
Yeah, I'm with you on if anything here, take the under. But I mean, I said a few weeks ago that I would bet Michigan State against Michigan State every game the rest of the year, and that they were on quit watch. I think we've progressed from Michigan State being on quit watch to Michigan State having quit with what happened in the second quarter or the second half, excuse me, against Rutgers a few weeks ago. So I'll take Minnesota and I'll take the Gophers to cover.
All right, Nebraska's a 2.5-point favorite at home against Purdue. I really don't have really too much to add to this one. But Nebraska's been playing some pretty good football as late. Purdue, not so much. I think Purdue has a shot to win this one, but give me Nebraska to win and cover.
Why does this game just scream Nebraska letdown?
Because it does.
Yeah, like I know Purdue isn't good, and Purdue has been good the last couple of years before this year. So like I feel like my mind is playing tricks on me in this.
I think Hudson Card being the quarterback kind of gives people an idea that Purdue should be better than what they are offensively, but he has not been good at all this season. So
it's just so weird with Nebraska. I don't know how to feel about them because like the games they win, like they're 17-9, 20-7, only beating Louisiana Tech 28-14. They're not scoring.
But they have a very good defense, and that's going up against a Purdue offense that's not very good.
They do. But I'm going to defy logic, and I'm going to say Purdue in the upset. I don't know why, but this just feels like a game that Nebraska just falls apart for some reason.
Fair enough. Marty.
Yeah, this does scream Nebraska letdown, doesn't it? It's just you're finally in a position to maybe make a run at the Big Ten West, and you screw this up. I think they're going to win. I'll take the Boilermakers to cover, though, because nothing's ever easy for Nebraska.
1 point victory?
I do think Nebraska wins, but they would. That's what they do. They win by one. They'll kick a field goal into the last play or something crazy, win by one. That's how it goes. Give me Nebraska.
Finally, 7:30 p.m. NBC. Ohio State travels to Madison to take on Wisconsin. Ohio State, a 14.5-point favorite. I do like the Buckeyes to win and cover. I think it'll maybe be by 15, 16, 17 points. But I wouldn't be surprised if Wisconsin keeps this one close for a quarter or two here. But I think Ohio State will eventually pull away in this one. There's also a legitimate chance Ohio State comes out and just, beats Wisconsin thoroughly in this one as well. But give me Ohio State to cover this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's any chance that, Ohio State could trip up the rest of the season before the Michigan game,
this would be it.
One. Yeah, if you're a Penn State fan, that
unless you have faith in Rutgers next week.
Yeah, that's.
They have to go. Have to go into Piscataway, man.
I mean, listen, Rutgers is much improved, and me and Dylan, we're going to take our credit where it's due. We said Rutgers bowl game. Marty laughed at us, and look at Rutgers now. They're 6-2.
They have to go into Piscataway where Rutgers hasn't lost this season. All I'm saying is nobody goes into Piscataway and faces the Knights and survives.
Will there be pandemonium in Piscataway yet again?
Could you imagine social media if Rutgers beats Ohio State before Penn State does?
I cannot. And for those who are out there watching, listen, I am not in any way being serious about next week and Rutgers' chances. But Rutgers is undefeated at home this year. They are 6-2. I mean, no, if Ohio State trips up before Michigan, it's this game.
But yeah, you're in Camp Randall, so you never know, especially at night. But, Ohio State should win this one and, in my opinion, cover pretty easily. This Wisconsin team is solid, but they're not great. And because of that, I just don't see them beating Ohio State.
Freshman quarterback out there, too.
Yeah, but crazier things have happened.
Crazier things have happened.
And if it's going to happen for Penn State fans, if you're going to have one of those two, Ohio State or Michigan, slip up, it's probably going to be this weekend if it was ever going to happen.
Sure.
So you just got to hope beyond all hope.
Marty.
Yeah, Ohio State wins and covers. I mean, even with it being in Camp Randall, I think maybe. I mean, maybe if Tanner Mordecai was healthy, although he hasn't really played well this year anyway. But yeah, Ohio State wins and covers. And I will say, I talked about James Franklin against the spread the week after Ohio State. In the James Franklin era, Ohio State has not always been, hasn't always come out and played their cleanest football the week after the Penn State game either. I think it's just a very physically and emotionally taxing game on both programs, and we see that the following week. I mean, there was the Iowa game, there's a Purdue game. I forget who it was that they played either last year before. It might have been Rutgers. They came out
Yeah.
and just screwed around and played with their food for the longest time. So I could see this thing being close until late. Maybe Ohio State getting a late score or two to cover, but I think the Buckeyes wind up winning and covering.
And before we wrap up and leave, Marty, I'm going to go to you this one. Penn State men's basketball plays an exhibition game tomorrow, or when this goes live tonight, Friday night, against Robert Morris. I know you will be at a high school football game tonight, but Friday night. But in general, anything that you'll be going back and looking for, or box score looking at in this game, particular for Penn State men's basketball?
Yeah, you'll see at some point on Friday. Dylan, you previewed the guards earlier this week. I'll have a preview on the front court. This season's going to go as far as the front court takes them. The guards are deep and decently talented. There's a lot of questions about the front court of this team. Do you have a true big man? I don't know. I think that question is going to get answered. So we'll find out. I'll be curious to see how that goes against Robert Morris. I mean, this isn't to his credit. I mean, Andy Toole has had Robert Morris humming at a very high level a few years back. This not some of those teams Toole had, in the last decade or so. But it's still, it's a good coach. So I'll be curious to see what they can do against the Colonials. And I'll be watching to see what do they get from the front court, because that's going to be key, especially when you get in the Big Ten play down the road and teams are going to want to play big and physical. One of the reasons last year they had the success they did down the stretch was the growth of a guy like Kebajai, was Mahaffey being able to go in there and play bigger than he was inside when you needed it. Do you have someone who can bring that to the table? I think there's guys on this roster capable of doing it with what they did in the portal, and with keeping a guy like Lilly around. But that's what I'll be curious to see from just box score watching and that sort of thing on Friday night.
Yep, Penn State men's basketball gets their season started next Monday against, 2 Mondays from now against Delaware State. And then they'll also face Lehigh, St. Francis, and Morehead State all at home before traveling down to Florida for the ESPN games around Thanksgiving, where they start off against Texas A&M. But we'll be previewing the Nittany Lions men's basketball team here in an upcoming episode as well. But until then, everybody, thank you for listening to another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast. Enjoy this weekend's game. Enjoy the college football. Enjoy the NFL. And we'll talk to you real soon.